The cargo bay of the interstellar transport ship, Meridian's Hope, buzzed with the usual chaos of a multi-species evacuation. Captain Elena Vasquez watched through the reinforced viewing ports as her crew loaded the final refugees from the doomed research station orbiting Kepler 442b. The station's fusion core had been compromised during a meteor shower, and they had maybe 6 hours before the whole thing became a radioactive tomb. "Captain, we're at maximum capacity," reported her first officer, Lieutenant Commander James Chen, his tablet displaying critical life support readings. 347 souls aboard, representing 12 different species. Environmental systems are already straining. Elena nodded grimly. The Meridian's Hope was designed to carry 200 beings comfortably. They were pushing every limit, but that was what humans did when lives were at stake. While other species calculated acceptable losses, humans seemed incapable of leaving anyone behind. In the main refugee bay, the scene was organized chaos. The Xanthari refugees huddled together in their environmental suits, their crystalline exoskeletons catching the overhead lights. The aquatic Dulari had been given the flooded compartments, while the silicon-based Korthax required specialized heating units. Each species had their own needs, their own fears, their own ways of processing the trauma of near death. Dr. Sarah Martinez moved between the groups with her medical team, checking on the wounded and administering what aid they could. She paused near a cluster of Vorthon academics, their 6 arms gesticulating wildly as they argued in their musical language about quantum mechanics and probability cascades. Even in crisis, some things never changed. "Doctor," called Ensign Tommy Rodriguez from across the bay, "we've got a problem over here." Sarah made her way through the crowd to where Tommy stood near the cargo staging area. Behind a stack of emergency supply crates, she could see something small and furry pressed against the far wall. It was trembling violently, and even from a distance she could tell it was in distress. "What is it?" she asked, kneeling down to get a better look. "Near as I can tell, it's a Silvani companion animal," Tommy replied, consulting his xenobiology scanner. "You know, one of those empathic pets the tree folk keep. But look at this." He showed her the scanner readings. "It's barely alive, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and its psychic resonance is all over the place." Sarah's heart sank. The Silvani were among the refugees, but their section was on the other side of the bay. She could see their tall, bark-like forms swaying gently as they communicated through subsonic vibrations. "Have you told them about their pet?" Tommy's expression darkened. "That's the problem, Doc. I did. They said they don't want it back." "What do you mean they don't want it back?" "According to the translator, the little guy got sick during the evacuation. Something about psychic contamination from the fear and panic. They said it's tainted now and can't be purified. They want us to leave it here." Sarah stared at the creature. It was about the size of a house cat. With iridescent fur that shifted between blue and silver, large liquid eyes, and delicate membrane wings folded against its back. Even in its weakened state, she could feel waves of sadness and confusion emanating from it. The Silvani were highly telepathic, and their companion animals served as emotional regulators and psychic filters. But apparently, once contaminated by negative emotions, they were considered irredeemably corrupted. "That's barbaric," she whispered. "Gets worse," Tommy continued. "I mentioned it to some of the other species. The Xanthari said it would be a mercy to end its suffering quickly. The Korthax don't even understand the concept of keeping animals as companions, and the Vorthons—" He shook his head. "They calculated that the resources needed to keep it alive could sustain 0.3 additional refugees, so they recommended jettisoning it into space." Dr. Martinez felt a familiar anger rising in her chest. It was the same feeling she'd had during her residency on Mars, when the Consortium Medical Board had suggested letting the mining accident victims die because treatment would be too expensive. The same feeling when the Terran Defense Force had wanted to abandon the colonists on Proxima Centauri because the rescue mission was deemed too dangerous. Humans, she had learned, were apparently the only species in the known galaxy who couldn't do math when it came to saving lives. "Tommy, help me get it to Medical Bay 3, she said, carefully approaching the creature. "Doc, we don't have the space or resources. The captain ordered all non-essential. I didn't ask for a report, Ensign. I gave you an order." Tommy hesitated, then nodded. He knew that look in Dr. Martinez's eyes. Every human in the fleet knew that look. It was the same expression Captain Vasquez had worn when she'd ordered the Meridian's Hope to make this rescue run despite Command's objections. The same look Commander Chen had when he'd volunteered to go EVA in a radiation field to save the Dulari children. The same look that every human seemed to get when faced with suffering they could potentially stop. As Sarah gently lifted the alien creature, she felt its fear transform into confused hope. Its large eyes fixed on her face, and she could swear she felt it trying to communicate something. Trust, maybe, or simply recognition that here was a being that wouldn't abandon it to die alone. The creature was lighter than she'd expected, its bones hollow like a bird's. Its fur was softer than anything she'd ever felt, and despite its weakened state, it radiated a warmth that seemed to seep into her very soul. As they made their way to the medical bay, several aliens watched with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. "Humans are so strange," she overheard a Zenthari noble commenting to its companion in their clicking language. "They waste resources on damaged goods. No wonder their species struggles to achieve true efficiency." Medical Bay 3 was barely larger than a closet, originally designed for equipment storage, but it was private, quiet, and had its own life support connections. Sarah cleared off a small examination table and gently placed the creature on it. Up close, she could see just how dire its condition truly was. "Arya, run a full biological analysis," she commanded the ship's AI. "Analysis complete, Dr. Martinez," the artificial intelligence responded in its crisp, professional tone. "Subject is a Sylvani empathic resonator, commonly called a spirit song by their species. Current condition critical, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and what appears to be psychic overload syndrome. Additionally, I'm detecting signs of emotional trauma consistent with abandonment distress. Treatment options: limited by species incompatibility with human medical protocols. However, the creature's basic physiological needs align with Earth mammalian requirements. Hydration, nutrition, and isolation from psychic stressors should stabilize its condition. Long-term prognosis uncertain without specialized Sylvani medical knowledge." Sarah began setting up an IV line. Her hands steady, despite the ship's occasional shudder as they pulled away from the doomed research station. The creature watched her every movement, its eyes reflecting an intelligence that was definitely more than animal level. "Hey there, little one," she whispered as she worked. "I know you're scared. I know everyone gave up on you. But that's not how humans work, okay? We don't abandon family, and right now, you're family." As if understanding her words, the creature let out a soft, musical trill that seemed to resonate in her bones. For just a moment, Sarah felt a wave of pure gratitude wash over her, so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "Dr. Martinez to bridge," she said, activating her comm unit. "Go ahead, Doctor," came Captain Vasquez's voice. "I'm going to need some supplies from the emergency stores, glucose solution, amino acid supplements, and if we have any, broad-spectrum antibiotics that might work on silicon-carbon hybrid biochemistry." There was a pause. "Doctor, we're already straining our medical supplies for the official refugees." "Captain, I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you of a medical decision I've made as Chief Medical Officer of this vessel." Another pause, longer this time. Then, incredibly, Sarah heard what sounded like a chuckle. Tommy told me about the Silvani pet. Should have known you'd adopt the damn thing. Consider your supplies approved, Doctor. Vasquez out. As Sarah continued working to stabilize her new patient, she could hear the sounds of the ship around her, engines humming as they pushed toward the nearest safe harbor. Refugees talking in a dozen languages about their losses, their fears, their hopes. The constant chatter of crew members working beyond their limits because that's what the job required. But in this small medical bay, there was only the soft breathing of a small alien creature that every other species in the galaxy had written off as worthless. Its eyes never left her face, and Sarah could swear she felt something like love radiating from its small form. "You know what?" she said softly, checking its vitals on the monitor. "I think you're going to need a name. How about Echo? Because sometimes the most important voices are the ones that get repeated when everyone else has gone quiet." Echo. The spirit song made that musical trill again, stronger this time. And for the first time since the evacuation began, Dr. Sarah Martinez allowed herself to smile. Outside the medical bay, word was spreading through the refugee sections. The humans had taken in the abandoned creature. Some aliens shook their heads in bewilderment. Others whispered about human foolishness and their strange inability to calculate cost versus benefit. But in the Silvani section, Elder Moon Whisper felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: shame. As an ancient being who had lived through the rise and fall of civilizations, she had long ago accepted that damaged things were simply discarded. It was the way of the galaxy, the natural order. Yet watching the humans work desperately to save what her people had condemned to death, she began to wonder if perhaps there was something fundamentally different about this young species, something that might change the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be civilized. The Meridian's Hope continued its journey through space, carrying its precious cargo towards safety. In the ship's records, Echo wasn't listed as a refugee. Officially, the spirit song didn't exist. But in Medical Bay 3, a small miracle was taking place, one that would have consequences none of them could yet imagine. As Echo's condition slowly stabilized, Dr. Martinez found herself staying longer and longer in the medical bay. There was something about the creature's presence that calmed her own stress, filtered through the empathic abilities that had caused its abandonment in the first place. She began to understand why the Silvani kept these companions, but she also began to understand something else, something that would prove crucial in the days to come. Echo wasn't just an empathic resonator. In its fevered state, connected to her through medical equipment and proximity, Sarah began to sense something more. Images, feelings, memories that weren't her own. The research station hadn't been destroyed by a meteor shower, and Echo had been the only witness to what really happened. 3 days into their journey to Sanctuary Station, Echo had made a remarkable recovery. The spirit song now perched alertly on Dr. Martinez's shoulder as she made her rounds, its iridescent fur gleaming with renewed health. The other crew members had initially been skeptical, but Echo's presence seemed to have an unexpected effect on everyone who spent time around the creature. Lieutenant Rodriguez found his chronic insomnia had vanished. Chief Engineer Park reported that her stress headaches disappeared whenever Echo visited the engine room. Even Captain Vasquez admitted that the constant tension in her shoulders eased when the small alien was nearby. "It's remarkable," Dr. Martinez told the captain during their daily briefing. "Echo's empathic abilities aren't just about emotional regulation. The creature seems to actively heal psychological trauma. The refugees who've interacted with it are showing reduced anxiety levels across the board." Captain Vasquez nodded, reviewing the medical reports on her tablet. "And the Silvani? Have they shown any interest in reclaiming their pet?" Sarah's expression darkened. "They won't even acknowledge its existence. I tried approaching Elder Moon Whisper yesterday. She looked right through me as if Echo wasn't there. She paused, watching Echo groom its delicate wing membranes. Captain, there's something else. Something I need to tell you privately. Vasquez gestured to the small conference room adjacent to the bridge. Once inside, Sarah activated the privacy screen and sat across from her commanding officer. Echo's been sharing memories with me, Sarah began carefully. Not intentionally, I think. It happens when I'm touching the creature, or when it's sleeping near me. I see flashes of the research station, moments before the evacuation. What kind of memories? Sarah pulled out her personal tablet and showed the captain a series of sketches she'd made. The meteor shower story isn't true. Echo was in the observation deck when it happened. There were ships, Elena. Alien ships I've never seen before. They attacked the research station. Captain Vasquez leaned forward, studying the drawings. The sketches showed sleek, predatory vessels with unusual energy signatures. The design was unlike anything in their databases. You're saying the research station was attacked? Why hasn't anyone else reported this? Because Echo was the only witness, Sarah explained. It was in the observation deck with Dr. Kellen, the Vorthan xenobiologist. When the attack began, Kellen activated the emergency lockdown and died trying to transmit a warning. Echo was trapped in there for hours, watching everything. The captain's face had gone pale. If this is true, it means whoever attacked the station is still out there, and every refugee on this ship believes they escaped a natural disaster. There's more. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. The attacking ships, they were scanning the refugees as they evacuated, like they were looking for something specific. Or someone. Before Captain Vasquez could respond, the ship's general alarm began blaring. Emergency lights bathed the conference room in red as the intercom crackled to life. "Captain, to the bridge immediately," came Commander Chen's urgent voice. "We have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Unknown configuration approaching fast." The two women rushed to the bridge, Echo still perched on Sarah's shoulder. The main view screen showed 5 sleek vessels emerging from quantum tunnels, their hulls gleaming like oil on water. They were exactly as Sarah's sketches had depicted. "Analysis?" Captain Vasquez demanded as she took her position in the command chair. "No matches in our database," reported the tactical officer. "But they're scanning us with some kind of exotic energy beam. Our shields are holding. But they're definitely probing for something." Commander Chen turned from his station. "Captain, they're hailing us." On screen. The view screen shimmered, revealing a figure that defied easy description. It was vaguely humanoid but stretched and angular, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "Human vessel, you carry something that belongs to us. Surrender the catalyst and your species may continue to exist." Captain Vasquez stood slowly. "I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran vessel, Meridian's Hope. We're carrying refugees from a destroyed research station. We have no idea what you're talking about." "The catalyst was at the research facility. Our scans indicate it is now aboard your vessel. You will surrender it, or we will take it by force." As the alien spoke, Echo began making distressed noises. The spirit song pressed closer to Sarah's neck, its small body trembling with fear. And suddenly, Sarah understood. "They're not looking for an object," she whispered to the captain. "They're looking for Echo." Captain Vasquez's eyes widened as the implications hit her. Echo wasn't just a pet abandoned by the Silvani. It was something far more significant. Something worth destroying an entire research station to obtain. "Unknown vessels," Captain Vasquez said firmly. "We are a medical transport carrying civilian refugees. We will not surrender anyone or anything to you without proper authorization and diplomatic protocols." The alien's expression didn't change, but the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. "Humans," Your species' propensity for protecting worthless things will be your extinction. You have one of your time periods called minutes to comply." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, "they're charging weapons, energy signatures unlike anything I've seen before. Red alert, all hands to battle stations, helm, evasive maneuvers." "Captain," Sarah said urgently, "Echo's trying to tell me something." The spirit song was making rapid chirping sounds, its eyes glowing with an intensity she'd never seen before. I think it's offering to surrender itself." "Absolutely not," Captain Vasquez said firmly. "We don't negotiate with terrorists, and we don't abandon crew members." "But Captain, I'm not crew. I'm just—" "Dr. Martinez," the captain interrupted. "That creature has been under our protection for 3 days. It's eaten our food, breathed our air, and helped heal our people. In my book, that makes it one of us, and humans don't abandon their own." The ship shuddered as the alien vessels opened fire. The Meridian's Hope wasn't a warship, but like most human vessels, it had been built with the assumption that eventually someone would try to kill everyone aboard. The shields held against the initial barrage, but warning lights were already flashing across the tactical displays. "Return fire!" Captain Vasquez ordered. "Target their weapons systems!" "Captain," Commander Chen called out, "our weapons are barely scratching their hulls. They've got some kind of adaptive shielding." Another salvo from the alien ships sent tremors through the deck plating. In the refugee bays, 347 beings from a dozen species huddled in terror, not understanding why they were under attack. "Captain," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmissions from the refugee sections. The Zenthari noble is demanding we surrender whatever the attackers want. Several other species representatives are making similar requests." Sarah felt Echo's tiny claws dig into her uniform as the spirit song pressed closer. Through their connection, she could feel its anguish at being the cause of so much danger. "What about the Silvani?" Captain Vasquez asked. "No response from their section, Captain." The ship shook again, more violently this time. Sparks flew from an overloaded console, and the lights flickered ominously. "Captain," the tactical officer announced, "shields down to 60%. At this rate, they'll break through our defenses in minutes." Captain Vasquez stared at the main screen, watching the alien vessels maneuvering for another attack run. Her mind raced through options, but they all led to the same conclusion. The Meridian's Hope was outgunned and outnumbered. They couldn't fight, and they couldn't run. But they could do what humans did best. "Open a channel to the attacking vessels," she ordered. "Captain," Commander Chen started to protest. "That's an order." The alien face appeared on the screen again, its expression unchanged. "Have you reconsidered our generous offer?" "I have a counter-proposal," Captain Vasquez said. "Single combat. Your champion against mine. Winner takes all." For the first time, the alien showed emotion. It was amusement, cold and predatory. "You would risk everything on individual combat? How primitive." "Very well. We accept your terms. Choose your warrior, human." The channel closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Captain," Commander Chen said slowly, "we don't have anyone who could possibly—" "I'll do it," Dr. Martinez interrupted. Echo chirped softly on her shoulder, and she reached up to stroke its fur. "It's my responsibility. I'm the one who saved Echo in the first place. Sarah, you're a doctor, not a fighter." "And Echo is a spirit song, not a weapon," Sarah replied. "But that doesn't mean we can't surprise them." She looked at the small creature perched on her shoulder, feeling the warmth of its presence in her mind. Through their empathic connection, she sensed Echo's agreement. Whatever the aliens wanted the spirit song for, they were about to discover that some bonds couldn't be broken by force. Captain Vasquez studied her chief medical officer for a long moment. "Are you sure about this, Sarah?" Dr. Martinez nodded, feeling Echo's tiny heartbeat against her neck. "Someone once told me that humans don't abandon their own. Time to prove that works both ways." As the Meridian's hope prepared for a confrontation unlike anything in human history, word spread through the refugee sections. The humans were risking everything to protect a small alien creature that its own species had abandoned. Some called it foolish. Others called it insane. But in the Silvani section, Elder Moon Whisper began to weep tears of crystalline sap. For the first time in centuries, she was witnessing something she had forgotten could exist. True compassion without calculation. Love without conditions. And in the observation deck where Dr. Kellen had died trying to warn the galaxy, his instruments were still recording everything that happened. The final test was about to begin. The cargo bay had been hastily converted into an arena. The alien vessels had docked with the Meridian's hope, their dark metal hulls seeming to absorb the light from the bay's illumination panels. Dr. Sarah Martinez stood in the center of the cleared space, Echo perched calmly on her shoulder despite the tension radiating from every human crew member present. Captain Vasquez had wanted to clear the area of all non-essential personnel, but representatives from every refugee species had insisted on witnessing the combat. They lined the walls of the bay, a living gallery of the galaxy's diversity. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to disgust at human foolishness. The alien champion emerged from the docking tunnel like a nightmare given form. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, it moved with fluid grace despite its imposing size. Its skin was the same light-absorbing black as its smaller counterpart, but this creature was built for violence. 4 arms ended in claws that could punch through starship armor, and its movements suggested speed that would make it nearly impossible to track. "This is their champion?" The creature spoke, its voice like breaking glass. "A small human female and a damaged spirit song? Our victory will be swift." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling Echo's warmth against her neck. Through their empathic bond, she could sense the spirit song's determination. Whatever these aliens had planned for Echo, they had underestimated what 3 days of human love and care could accomplish. "The terms," announced the alien leader from the observation deck. "Single combat to unconsciousness or death. The victor's people claim the catalyst. Do you accept these conditions?" "We accept," Captain Vasquez replied before Sarah could speak. The arena fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Sarah looked up at Echo, who gazed back with those large, intelligent eyes. "You ready, little friend?" she whispered. Echo's response was a soft, musical trill that seemed to resonate through the bay. Several of the watching refugees shifted uncomfortably as they felt the sound in their bones. The alien champion moved first, crossing the distance between them with inhuman speed. Sarah barely had time to dodge as razor-sharp claws whistled through the air where her head had been. She rolled away, but the creature was already turning for another attack. That's when Echo sang. It wasn't the gentle trill Sarah had grown accustomed to. This was something primal, a sound that seemed to come from the very core of the spirit song's being. The note hung in the air, growing stronger and more complex as Echo poured its essence into the song. The alien champion stumbled, its movements becoming erratic. Around the bay, several of the watching refugees cried out in alarm as they felt the psychic resonance wash over them. But instead of the fear and panic that had originally corrupted Echo, this song carried something else entirely. Love. Pure, unconditional, protective love. Sarah felt it too. But rather than being overwhelmed, she found herself strengthened by it. The exhaustion from 3 days of caring for Echo melted away, replaced by a clarity and energy she'd never experienced. Through their bond, she could feel Echo drawing on every moment of care she'd given, every gentle touch, every whispered word of comfort. The alien champion recovered quickly, but its next attack was met not by a fleeing doctor, but by someone moving with impossible grace. Sarah ducked under the creature's swing and struck back, her medical training guiding her to pressure points that worked on most humanoid species. The alien staggered, then roared in fury. "Impossible! The spirit song is contaminated. It should be weakened." "That's where you're wrong," Sarah said, feeling Echo's presence like a warm glow in her mind. "You see, you never understood what Echo really is." The alien charged again, but this time Sarah was ready. As the creature lunged, Echo's song reached a crescendo, and suddenly the bay was filled with something that made every refugee gasp in astonishment. Images. Memories. Not just Echo's memories of the attack on the research station, but deeper memories. The true history of the spirit songs and their creators. The story the aliens had tried so hard to suppress. The Sylvana hadn't created the spirit songs as pets. They were the offspring of an ancient civilization that had tried to warn the galaxy about these very aliens. The shadow creatures, as they had been known then, fed on fear and despair, growing stronger from the suffering of others. The spirit songs were living repositories of hope, designed to counter the shadow creatures' influence. But over millennia, the Sylvani had forgotten. They had reduced the spirit songs to mere emotional regulators, breeding out their true power in favor of docile companions. When the shadow creatures returned, they found a galaxy unprepared, its greatest defense reduced to disposable pets. All except Echo. Through the bond with Sarah, through 3 days of being loved and cared for by beings who asked nothing in return, Echo had remembered what it truly was. Not a pet, but a guardian. Not contaminated by negative emotions, but purified by something the shadow creatures couldn't understand. Selfless love. The alien champion's attacks grew more desperate as Echo's song intensified. Around the bay, the refugees began to change. The Zenthari's crystalline shells started to glow with an inner light they hadn't shown in generations. The Vorthons stopped their constant calculations and began to weep for the first time in their species' history. Even the pragmatic Korthax felt something stirring in their silicon hearts. But it was the Sylvani who were most affected. Elder Moonwhisper stepped forward from her people's group, her bark-like skin showing patterns that hadn't been seen since her youth. As Echo's song reached her, she remembered what her people had once been, before they had chosen efficiency over empathy, logic over love. "Catalyst," she whispered in her musical language. "Not a thing to be taken, but a gift to be shared." The alien champion made one final desperate lunge, but Sarah was no longer fighting alone. Every refugee in the bay, every crew member, even the ship's AI, was connected through Echo's song. They moved as one, not physically but spiritually. The shadow creature's claws met not flesh, but a barrier of pure will backed by 347 souls who had decided that some things were worth protecting. The impact sent the alien flying backward into the bulkhead with enough force to dent the reinforced metal. It slid to the deck, unconscious but breathing. Echo's song gradually faded, but its effects lingered. The spirit song looked exhausted but triumphant as it nuzzled against Sarah's cheek. The alien leader's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with an emotion that might have been fear. "This is impossible. The catalysts were destroyed eons ago. We made sure of it." "You destroyed the originals," Elder Moonwhisper said, stepping into the center of the arena. "But love, once planted, grows in ways you cannot predict. This human," she gestured to Sarah, "watered a seed you thought had died, and now it bears fruit you cannot harvest by force." Captain Vasquez's voice was steady as she addressed the aliens. "You lost. Honor the terms of combat and withdraw." There was a long pause before the alien leader responded. "This victory means nothing, humans. Your species is young and weak. We will return when you are not so fortunate in your champions." "Maybe," Captain Vasquez acknowledged. "But when you do, you'll find we've learned something today. And we'll be ready." The alien vessels disengaged from the Meridian's Hope and disappeared back into hyperspace, leaving the refugees and crew to process what they had witnessed. In the days that followed, as they continued toward Sanctuary Station, the ship became something unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had barely tolerated each other began working together. The Zenthari nobles helped the Dulari children learn to read. The Korthax engineers taught the Vorthons about intuitive problem-solving. And at the center of it all, Echo moved freely through the ship, no longer just Sarah's patient, but a friend to everyone aboard. Elder Moonwhisper approached Dr. Martinez on the final day of their journey. The ancient Silvani moved with a grace that seemed impossible for her tree-like form. "Dr. Martinez," she said in carefully pronounced human language, "I owe you an apology that spans generations. My people forgot what the spirit songs truly were. We reduced them to tools and discarded them when they no longer served our purposes." Sarah stroked Echo's fur as the spirit song rested in her lap. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." "Indeed. But your species has shown us something we had forgotten. That love is not a weakness to be calculated away, but a strength that multiplies when shared." The elder paused, her ancient eyes studying Echo. "The spirit song has chosen you, Dr. Martinez. Will you accept the bond permanently?" Sarah looked down at Echo, who chirped softly and nuzzled her hand. Through their connection, she felt the spirit song's contentment, its joy at having found not just a protector, but a true companion. "I think I already have," she replied. When the Meridian's Hope docked at Sanctuary Station, news of their journey had already spread throughout the galaxy. The footage recorded by Dr. Kellen's instruments had been transmitted to every major civilization, showing not just the shadow creature's attack, but the remarkable defense mounted by a human doctor and an abandoned alien pet. Requests for spirit song companions flooded in from species across the galaxy. But the Silvana had learned their lesson. Echo was not the last of the true spirit songs, merely the first to be awakened. But they would not be given away as pets or tools. They would be partners, friends, family members to those who could offer the one thing that made the bond possible. Unconditional love. As Sarah walked through Sanctuary Station with Echo perched on her shoulder, she reflected on how much their lives had changed. 3 days ago, she had been a ship's doctor who had made a simple choice to save a dying creature that everyone else had abandoned. Now she was part of something that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be civilized. Behind them, Captain Vasquez was already fielding requests from the Terran Defense Force. They wanted to study what had happened aboard the Meridian's Hope, to understand how a single human-alien bond had defeated an enemy that had terrorized civilizations for millennia. But Sarah knew they would never understand it through study or analysis. The answer was simple, even if it was something most species found impossible to quantify. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was the willingness of someone to say, "You're not abandoned. You're family now." Echo chirped softly and settled more comfortably on her shoulder. Through their bond, Sarah could feel the spirit song's happiness, its gratitude, and beneath it all, something else. Hope. Hope that spread from one small creature to one determined human to a ship full of refugees, to a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to care for the abandoned and unwanted. The shadow creatures were still out there, feeding on fear and despair wherever they could find it. But now they faced something they had never encountered before. An alliance of species united not by treaties or mutual benefit, but by the radical idea that everyone deserved to be loved. and at the center of it all was a small alien creature with iridescent fur and large, intelligent eyes. A creature that every civilized species in the galaxy had been willing to abandon to die, everyone except the humans.